everybody. Welcome back to Success on the Spectrum. This is episode 2, and today's going to be a data dump on almost everything we're talking about. So get your pens and papers and tune in for a minute. My name is Lindsay Erickson. I am here with Shay, Brittany, and Morgan as per usual. And we're going to jump right into our topics today because we got a lot packed in. So I very quickly do want to put a bug in everybody's ear though, and you're going to get tired of me saying this, but if you find any value today, click the little bell right down here so you get notified every time we post something new. Works out of the way now. All right, so the first thing that we're going to talk about in our segment, support systems, is we're actually going to talk about relationships. So each one of us neurodivergent women on this call is in a relationship with a neurotypical man. And generally speaking, if you get online and you go to look at like what the world will say about the struggles or benefits to that, it will start with struggles. And a lot of the struggles that they say is, learning each other's communications or learning each other's social cues or understanding each other's needs in either direction. But the things that we want to focus on more today are going to be the positives, and the positives that I know that I have seen, and each lady will take their turns talking about their positives after me. But the biggest positives that I see is it brings a lot of balance to my life and to theirs. Generally, neurotypical men have instinctual, protective traditional drives. And I believe that when they partner with neurodivergent women, this gets triggered much more, almost like, not to say that any of us are wounded, but kind of like the wounded bird theory, where they see something that like needs to be protected in their cute little thing. And a lot of times, if you go and look at the way that even we're portrayed in the media, online, etc., the traits of neurodivergent men are not found to be nearly as cute as the traits of most neurodivergent women. So I do think that that does trigger also a, she's cute, I want, she will be mine, right?
I had not thought about that.
Right. So I have found that, and I would bet, and you guys answer this for yourselves, but I would bet each one of you, your man is much more traditional than the average 20-25 dude, right? Am I right? Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that just the data on our relationships alone speak to that. But realistically, I'm wondering, and you guys jump in as you see fit. But some of the things, I'll give you one for that's in my relationship. One of the things for me is that my partner fully understands my sensory issues. So foods that I can't eat, clothes that are going to feel weird, noises I can't handle. And he's so cognizant of creating spaces where I'm just at my happiest, because that's what we want for our partners, that it's almost become like a second nature for him to ping these things ahead of me to create a safer space. So
and
that's one of the ways that I know I benefit from it the most. Yeah.
I'll chime into that too, because I think a lot of times in past relationships, I was made to feel like those things that I really needed were difficult. Like, for example, coming home from a really long work trip, I used to travel all the time for work, and my partner knowing that when I come home, the home is clean, that in itself, decluttered, the cleanliness of it, dishes done, all those things change the way I'm impacted, like even coming in back into that new environment, because it's already overwhelming to like, even from like a packing standpoint and the organization that even I take to like go into, like, I don't pack like a regular, you've seen how I pack. Like, you've seen how my suitcase looks like when we're sharing a room. I think all of you have at this point. So like the way I pack to like the way I come home and unpack and like the house being clean, like Kai knows that, right? And he like knows like, okay, Morgan's out of town right now. When she comes home, like these are the things I need to have done, because otherwise she's
gonna come home pissed.
And it's not because I like necessarily just am mad at him, but it's just the anxiety or just the things that go on in my brain are so much
overstimulation.
Yes, it's too much. Yeah. So even just like cleaning my room, making my bed, that will just cheer me right up, you know, if I have a long laundry list of things to do. So I just think that playing in and having a partner that does support that and isn't like, gosh, you're so demanding, like you want the house clean when you come home. It's like, no, like we want each other to grow and be more productive. And these are things my partner needs to be more productive. So
yeah. Or God forbid, they're like, oh, that's your job.
yeah.
Oh yeah. So there's a book, and I'm going to mention it a couple times in this episode. It's The Year I Met My Brain by Matilda Bosley. And she mentions in there how we tend to show up in relationships a lot differently than neurotypical women. It's like for my ADHD, like it's so hard for me to keep things super clean. But I prefer them that way, but I have to lean into an energy burst to actually get it done. It's hard for me to just do it all the time. And so like having a partner who helps you do that, and he's not like, why didn't I get one of those women who's just like super tidy? And you know, my boyfriend John is very understanding of how my brain works. And he did a bunch of research on ADHD, which was such an emotional experience for me, because I had begged men in the past to understand me. I was like, teachers didn't understand me. My family didn't understand me. My friends don't understand what's going on. Like, I just want the person that I spend my life with and share my body with and share my thoughts with and the most intimate with, just to understand like what's going on and how I function. And he did that. And so now he'll say things like, you know, hey, honey, we're going to need to hurry up a little bit. You're having a little bit of time blindness. It's okay. But we are on a little bit of a crunch. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. Thank you. And just being very organized for us in a way that is not degrading and makes me feel like crap about myself, but it is a way that like, hey, I'm here to support you. I can see that you're falling off a little bit, but I know why that is because I studied how you function. So let me gently help you get back on track. It's like the most freeing, beautiful thing.
Well, and even back to that, you literally had that pivotal moment. I remember even just in the last year where when you guys, I feel like really started getting serious. I don't know, not to dish out all your dirty laundry, but it matters, like having that supportive, like, cause you go through it, like, especially when whether you're self-employed or not, but like, I think, you know, for the base, we're all self-employed. So it's very difficult to not have someone that's willing to like, know those qualities of when you're getting out of the normal flow and like how to encourage you to get back on. Like that it makes the moments pivotal. Like I remember,
especially when every day looks or can look so different. It's like being able to recognize that pattern. Like Steve will also gently like guide, he'll just pop in like, hey honey, how we doing in here?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
you work with him every day.
Yeah. And now, I mean, now we're kind of like working on different things. We're still basically together or like around each other almost 24/7. And I was
Which can be a lot.
Yes.
That can be hard.
Yes. And also it's shocking to me how happy I am to be around someone and him that much, because I was so like, you guys know me, Lindsay, you've known me longest, but I am like a hyper independent person. Like I very much love and relish in my alone time. You're the same way too. Like I don't need a lot of like social interaction. I want meaningful social interaction, but like I do not need to be around people all the time. And so the fact that we have been able to like happily cohabitate, you know what I mean? Like obviously we're not like, it's not like birds chirping all the time. It's not a Disney movie, but but there's not like a lot of major strife along the way. It's not like there's a constant like gnashing of teeth just to get any little thing done. And so much of that is because he's just like, chill. I am unchill.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the difference for a second. Raise your hand, ladies, if you've been with a man who is also neurodivergent. How did that go?
Big mistake.
It was
big mistake.
Horrible.
Huge.
Here was my biggest takeaway was the fact that, so he was a little bit younger, so they're already naturally more immature, but he had severe ADHD, would not admit it, would not medicate himself. And so just a fucking disaster. Like I had to take care of making sure the bills were paid on time, making sure that we got to places on time. I had to do everything. And that for me is freaking overwhelming anyways. And so having to be in my masculine, take care of the house, have someone who will not admit that he has neurodivergence and is so scatterbrained and impulsive and spending money on stupid stuff, like it drove me insane and ultimately it gave me the ick. I was very I was done.
Isn't
well,
it
and then being
interesting?
unaware
Go ahead,
of it
Morgan.
too doesn't make anything better.
Well, no, much worse.
It's so bad. I don't want to live with another me. No, thank you. One of me is plenty.
Isn't it interesting though how all of us females here are, and I don't really like to use these terms, but we're all alphas or you know, boss babes or whatever by our own right. But all of our men are leaders.
Well, yeah, it's so, I actually wrote that down as a point that I wanted to make is having someone who's neurotypical. John is he thinks so differently than I or we do. And so he's very this is what we need to do. And or this is an issue and here's a solution and done. Or,
yeah, it's A to B.
Yeah. He can tell when I know that we need groceries, and he can just tell that I do not want to go to the grocery store. So without asking, he just goes and gets the groceries. Or he'll see that I'm down to one roll of toilet paper and a whole thing will just arrive at the door the next day. So because I feel taken care of, I feel like I can trust him to make decisions for our household. I feel like I can trust that he will get things done. I get to sit in my feminine for the very first time in my life, where I feel like a cutesy little girl who's just in the arms of a man who's going to take care of business, And I think it's just huge. So important.
Yeah. That's so big what you said about being able to finally sit in your feminine.
Yeah, it completely changes your life. It actually, I had a weird transition there for a bit because I worked so hard in building my business that I had this moment where when we started dating, I was like, I don't want to work this hard anymore. I got over that really fast. But it was a phase where I was like, I don't want to boss babe anymore. I want to be a cutie little home wife. And then
I'm still feeling that.
Dude, that's I don't want to adult anymore. I just want to build a blanket fort in color.
I will literally
catch me.
So that goes to say something though about the way that the neurodivergent brain actually develops. And I'm going to put some science behind this in our next segment. If any of you ladies have anything to add on the relationship side, I will probably make that transition now. Cool.
I want to add one thing. I just want to add one thing. And this is just something that I wanted to mention because I feel like, and you're going to probably touch on this in the developmental part of how your brain develops, but I feel like we have struggled and suffered through relationships with men who were just like us because in some sense we felt we were kind of broken the way that we were. And we didn't think that we would actually be able to accept love from just a good, wholesome man.
I question it daily.
Truly, I every day have to check myself and be like, how is it that I landed the most wonderful, just wholesome man as my husband, who also came with this incredible family to boot? You know what I mean? Just drastically different from all these absolute bonkers losers that I dated, trying to make something work because we were connecting on the brokenness. And it was like, oh, I'm like that too. And
a little trauma bond for you.
Yeah. Now there's no trauma in the bond, and that allows for, like you said, that safe space where you could just open your flower petals and just be like, oh, all right, go ahead.
Breathe.
That's
Breathe.
all.
You can
Go ahead.
finally breathe. Take your shoulders out of your ears. No, I love it. So yeah, that all of that comes into the development of not only how we mask and where we fall on the spectrum, but I'm gonna in our next little part here is called "Is It Just Me Or?" and we're gonna talk about echolalia and stimming. But I first want to start that conversation with putting some context out there for any neurotypical people listening, or anybody that hasn't done all their research yet or still discovering, themselves. So there is an allistic brain, which is like a neurotypical brain. And then there is the autistic brain. So those are the two terms that I'm going to give everybody a chance to learn for a moment. And something that happens, and whether you're autistic or not, this is generally a neurodivergent thing. But there's something that happens with the development of the brain from birth on, and it's called synaptic pruning. And so in your brain, all of your little neurons, all your things that connect to make your biology move, all of the things, right, all happen inside your brain. There are these little fibers called synapses that line all of those. A neurotypical person loses between 50 to 60% of those during the course of, infancy to developed brain as an adult. Autistic people do not. And so there is actual scientific biologic backing to show that we do intake a substantial amount more information than a neurotypical person because we have more receptors. And I think part of what happens with the ADHD brain and the autistic brain is just how they interpret and decipher that information and how it develops or expresses internally for us in a biological sense. So, the lack of focus, hyperactivity, all of those things. Whereas like the autistic brain, like it takes a minute to process all of this. Like we get overwhelmed and shut down, whereas you guys get like, it's the complete opposite side of it. But it all works from the same synapses. So synaptic pruning, now everybody knows what that is. And it's part of the reason that a lot of us are so hypersensitive to things like sound and sight and feel and all of those things. So the two pieces of that we're going to talk about today, and I think the relationships actually tie into this because I would bet every one of your men thinks that your stimming is cute. Show of hands, who dances when their food comes to the table? I know at least 3 of us do because I have video evidence from dinner the other night.
Is that considered stemming?
That's a stim, yeah. So there's 2 different types of stimming. There's an overwhelm. I'm actually going to pull my phone out for some of these words because I am learning along with everybody else right now on these calls. So
even as someone who doesn't have autism but has ADHD, I can also have stems.
Oh, absolutely. It's a neurodivergent thing. Most of what we will talk about on this will span the spectrum for the most part, unless it's our personal stories that will get specific into our own diagnoses. Okay. Yeah. But stimming, I like to talk about the joyful stimming because I unfortunately am one that does a lot of negative stimming. I was talking earlier about how I have my nails done all the time because I will pick at my skin to the point of I am like injuring myself if I have my natural nails. And it's literally when I'm anxious, and I do it when I'm in places where I'm uncomfortable. Anybody out there that listens to this that ends up in a room with me for more than 30 minutes at any point, just watch. I stim all the time. I will wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning doing the cricket foot thing in the middle of the night because I'm stimming from whatever is happening in my dreams. So pay attention for those of you out there. If you do a little happy dance when your food comes, you might be stimming. So there's a little social testing for you today. We'll give you another one. You might be stimming if, yes. Unfortunately, in my children, I've seen some of the negative in stimming because 2 out of 4 of my children are also, I believe, autistic. I'm not, and here's a controversial thing, I'm not forcing an early diagnosis on them because I'm aware enough to create support systems for them where they won't struggle in life. And I don't want them to get labeled early enough that they crutch themselves. Because I believe that those of us who have to learn how to fully live in like normal society become some of the more successful in adapting to a balanced life. So
Love that.
controversial thing, I might get some hate for that from some of the moms out there, but I will make a good environment for my children where they don't have the struggles that I had. So on that, stims, do you guys have any regular ones that you know that you do that you want to share?
I do my like penguin leg flap thing.
I have videos of that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I actually didn't know that I did that. I'm not sure who called it out. It might have been you, Lindsay, actually, like 2, 3 years back. I never noticed it. I know that I hadn't ever had a partner notice it until I got together with Steve. And now I notice it all the time. So it's like if I'm excited, if I'm uncomfortable, if I'm in a loop, I'll do it sometimes. It's like a comfort thing. I don't know. Like if I get stuck in a loop, I'll, walk into a room, forgot why I was there, or got distracted by something else, walked back out of the room, and then I just get really frustrated with myself. I'm just like, gosh, can you just get your shit together? Then I'll just find myself just being like, okay.
Regulating.
And it's like a reset kind of.
You're regulating your nervous system is exactly what you're doing.
And I don't know, maybe if, because I do have like, obviously they could just be like weird habits that I do, but like even you said stimming in your sleep and I'm like, oh my gosh, I do this thing where I raise my hand in my sleep.
Me
and
too.
Kai has multiple videos of that, but I'll be like just laying down, I'm just like for like a while and I'll keep it raised. And like I'll coo. I'm like Jillian Moore, my good friend from high school, used to call it cooing, which Shay, you look so much like her. It creeps me out, even with your hat. It's even tensions, everything same. But she would always be like, you were like cooing in your sleep. And I'm like, I do it when I'm awake too. But like making like noises or sound effects or like making some sort of like movement with my mouth while I'm thinking. But like, I don't know. I just used to think that I was just weird,
Well, unfortunately, that's how you feel in a neurotypical society. You're not neurotypical, ma'am.
Well, this brings a point to, tell me if you guys agree with this first. Do you think that autism has all of the sudden in the last couple of years gotten a lot more popular on social media?
No, I think neurodivergence in general.
I think people have gotten a lot more access to testing because of social platforms.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I don't think there's 2 forms of thought on that. One is that our brains are evolving to keep up with our current lifestyles and our massive amount of data input all of the time. So we're biologically evolving. That's one train of thought. Another train of thought is that it is trendy. And that is why I suggest to everybody, go get diagnosed. And towards the end of this call, we're actually, we're going to have a full segment talking about what it looks like to get properly diagnosed in today's, American medical society.
And self-advocacy throughout that process.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that in like literally just a few minutes here. But another thought process is that it is just people are getting more access to the information that wasn't supplied to us, especially women. There's such a gender bias, but we'll get into some of the data on that too. But there's, TikTok trends and.
Well, the reason I brought that up is because I'll have to see if I have any like stems or tendencies like that, because from what I've seen on social media, it was all like autism equaled stemming. And so I've never seen it. I didn't know it was just a neurodivergent thing. And so I haven't paid attention. So I don't know because I didn't know that. So this is actually really cool to know.
Do you dance when your food comes?
Oh, for sure.
Okay. When you hear somebody singing lyrics or humming a song that you know, do you feel the urge to repeat it?
Absolutely.
So that is another form of stimming called echolalia. And there's 3 forms of that, but it is highly common marker of neurodivergent, and it is not autistic specific. So that is one. And the 3 types, so there's like immediate echolalia, which is like repeating words, phrases, songs like immediately as you hear them. There's a delayed one where it like a few minutes later. And then the one that most of this most autistics actually have, especially if they're not as high masking or low support systems, it's what it's called now. They have mitigated echolalia, which is where they will actually hear the thing and then create their own language of it before repeating. And that's like a whole different, that's generally in like nonverbal autistics. But yeah, it involves like changing the intonation and the pitch and the verbiage and everything, but it's still a form. Just a little.
So like even like, because back in the day, I used to have this habit where when someone was talking, I would like mouth what they were saying at the same time. Like even on doors, sometimes it would come back out like on doors, but people thought it was funny.
That might even
like,
be a form of masking. Potentially.
Like I know it's not appropriate to do that all the time for sure.
I had a friend when I was a kid that I grew up with, and I should see how he's doing. Anyway, Danny would do that where he would stare at my mouth while I was talking, and he would be like mouthing and almost trying to figure out what I was going to say next. And I never understood that until this exact moment.
Yep, I would do that I still sometimes, Kyle.
Shout out to Danny Pomerantz.
if it's really serious, I will catch myself doing it, especially if I'm like trying to make sure I'm under, like if someone's like this, every piece of this information I'm about to give you is really important, I'll catch myself doing it.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, am I actively listening or no? Like I gotta make sure really in this case that it's like I'm really
You're disassociating in dialogue.
Yeah. That's
if
interesting.
So what you're saying, I'll hopefully not do it.
So it's almost like you're live verbal highlighting. Like I have to have a tactile interaction with information for it to really stick.
Yep.
So it's like when I read, I have to highlight, like
Yep.
even if it's like not for a paper or anything, like I have to highlight. So it's almost like you're doing that in like real time with the person that you're talking to, trying to just like highlight, understand, retain.
Yep. But
but
also
processing
too, like
information.
noticing it versus like not noticing it. But I've had people like, and I feel like I notice more of this stuff like because of doors, honestly. But in door to door, I would knock on someone's door and they would catch me doing it, and they would think that I was being rude,
like mocking them.
Yeah, and I'm like, I didn't even notice I was doing that. Like, really?
Yeah.
So sorry.
I wonder what the name is for that.
I have to look. I'll do some research.
All right. I'll make a note.
I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is. Let's move on to our next segment, ladies. Are you ready? Okay. Yeah. Morgan's going to be doing a data dump for us today. And for those of you that maybe have not seen an episode yet, data dump for neurodivergence is where we just get a massive amount of information about something cool that somebody's excited about. So Morgan, what's your talking point today, ma'am?
All right, so probably no surprise because this is what I'm hyper focused on right now. But just talking about really just hydrogen water and my rabbit hole of information that led me to kind of why I'm so obsessed and hyper focused on it right now. So really, if anybody knows anything about blue zones, like there's documentaries on Netflix about them now. Really, the per capita places where people live to be more than 100 years old. So right now, I think there's 6 total blue zones, but the rabbit hole started with really trying to understand, okay, what are these people in these blue zones really doing that's different than what we do everywhere else? And my boyfriend, Kai, he happened to have lived in Japan, Okinawa, Japan for 5 years he lived there, speaks Japanese, was always a big fan of really that type of food too. So like culturally speaking, the Japanese have this really amazing reputation for the types of food they eat, the type of water that they drink. So between him, as well as my obsession with the particular company that I learned about hydrogen water through, I go down these rabbit holes of like, okay, really, what's the importance of water, right? And you find out, just a couple of fun facts for everybody. You find out that the body is 60 to 70% full of water. And really, our blood is 90% of that is made of 90% water as well. 75% of your muscle tissue is water. So how it all kind of came together full circle between Kai having lived in Japan, me wanting a lot of water for this door-to-door job, and then also really wanting to be healthier, full circle, I just, again, started educating myself on the benefits of hydrogen water. And there's a huge trend going around on hydrogen water right now. So if you look at just 75% of American adults are considered chronically dehydrated. So we talk about, neurodivergence, but the play into like brain fog, right? Like what's affecting our brain fog? Food, the types of food we're eating, the type of water we're drinking. So really when it boils down to it, like your water is everywhere. And this is how we're digesting food. And most of everything that we start, just the whole process of our digestion is made capable or is possible because of water, because of hydration. So anyway, I just full circle moment for me. It's like, okay, our water is the source of our lives and it's all directly connected to our health. And so paying attention to the kind of water that we drink can influence, everything from muscle recovery to the way we're actually digesting our supplements and our body ingesting the supplements and how they're actually digested in our body. So most everything that we eat causing, acidic responses in our bodies, but most everyone always says, oh yeah, I struggle with diet and exercise or brain fog or energy, stress, trouble sleeping, can all
cancer.
Cancer can all be tied back to quite literally dehydration. And so, of course, I get my hands on this hydrogen water machine a couple of years ago, again, just because I wanted access to clean water to drink more water during door to door, but quickly realized that like water is different and it's not all created equal. And living water, or I guess, structured versus unstructured water, doesn't provide a immune boosting process for our bodies. It doesn't help with muscle recovery. Not only that, but like the amount of plastics that we're ingesting just from buying plastic bottles, that's really, when it boiled down to it, I just wanted to save money on bottled water. But like, lo and behold, you've got the cancer risk of, people who drink chlorinated water are 93% higher at higher risk, 93% higher risk for 93% higher risk for those that do not drink chlorinated water. So all of that causes blurred vision, types of skin conditions. You talk about psoriasis, which I know, Lindsay, we've talked about a lot, but it's all these things that could be just cured by simply just changing our water. And so really it's like improving health, saving money, but really it's just returning to origin, which is like Japan. Japan is one of the original, you look at companies that have been around for how long? Japan has the longest standing company in the world, 1,000 years. Like you look at American companies have been around on average anywhere from 10 to 20 years. Like most average companies don't last, 50, 100, hundreds of years. Really, we can't even go back that far with the United States because we've only been around for so long. But really just the return to origin and like understanding that, energetically speaking, that, water is the source of life. So that's my data dump today.
I love it.
Fun fact for you, Morgan, just to back up what you just said. I once had a thought years and years and years ago, and it was at a music festival, but my thought was water is the currency of gods.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you for turning me into more of a water snob and helping me with that journey. But like literally, preach, girl.
Well, and if
on
you
water.
you think about the connection, and of course for me, I was like, I just want clean water. But if you think about the connection to the source of like water is how we live, right? Flowing water, like, and then with the blue zones, and then my tie to Japan and just believing in, you know, the diets that they eat, the type of lifestyle that they live, they haven't really done a lot of things wrong. So I have a hard time like debunking, you know, a lot of the things that they do. I'm like, okay, whatever
Shout
they
out
do,
to Japan.
they're clearly doing something right, because like the majority of 80-year-olds are just walking around like full-fledged miles upon. I went last year and just witnessed it for myself. I'm like, this is like, we're focusing on really and again, I already dated them, so I won't do it anymore, because that's why I got my 5 minutes. But like, if we just simply stop prescribing medication for every single thing for all the time, and maybe just looked at our diet and our water, might
That
find
One thing that I noticed about you, because Morgan and I have been friends for like a decade, and I noticed suddenly a couple years ago, I was like, what is your skincare? You look amazing. And she was like, it's water. It's water. And I was like, shut the hell up. No, it's not. But it totally is. It is literally the water.
Drinking
also,
it, spraying it on my face.
It's also one of the things that I'm using to treat my terminally ill child with cancer. So,
and again, won't data dump again, but like, when I don't have any personal testimonials, and I know all of you, I'm waiting on a couple from you two ladies, but really,
yeah,
like,
my bad. I gotta do that.
I don't have any personal testimonials where I'm like, I've had this amazing story about this water. It really is just like made me
a series of small things that are consistently improving over time.
I'm
Like
40
for me,
years
a big
old,
one is
no
my health.
Botox.
Yeah.
I'm 40 years old, no Botox. All I do is spray the 2.5 and the red light. So there's that.
You don't need to like overcomplicate like so many things too. I think we're all like you're saying, like info dumped on, and again, just like simplifying just even regular routine and just making things again more simplified is really all we need. And it's from the inside out, right?
If any of you who are listening are interested in this, or you want to pull the trigger, or you want more information, Morgan's Instagram handle is on here. And yes, and you know,
and she's more than happy to data dump.
More than happy to talk to you about it.
And I know
she
not
will
to data dump
cover you in water.
I do not data dump on people on. It's so funny because literally
on the first date.
I'll still do it on the first call. On a sale, on a discovery call, I don't data dump, but on the first date, definitely. I like to get that out of the way.
All right.
Thank you, Morgan.
Hey, Morgan, what are you doing later?
Yeah. God.
Oh, here.
Just spray some 2.5 on it. It'll be fine. I love that.
Sorry.
Okay. So we are going to close out today's call with a segment that is going to have some information and some personal stuff in it. So on Share Your Spectrums segment this week, we are going to be talking about the gender bias in diagnoses for neurodivergence and the process to get properly diagnosed in America right now. And we will be sharing our personal journeys in that. So I'm going to kick it off with just some basic data and information for some backing so that you know that the things that we're talking about are the real deal. So let's start with the gender bias. And ladies, raise your hands if you've heard these before. But on average, for every female that is diagnosed with autism, 3 to 6 men are on average. There's not less autism in women. We just don't get diagnosed as much as we need to. For ADHD, the average child to get average male child's diagnosis happens at the age of 7. The average female diagnosis happens between the ages of 34 and 37. And I will cite some of the places where I'm getting this information from in the caption if you'd like to go read for yourself, because always I suggest gather your data, know what you're talking about. So on that, there is also and this is the one that shocks me the most, for non-verbal autistic children. These are children that cannot communicate. Males are on average diagnosed 1.8 years younger. And that is normally at the age of 4, which means that these young girls are going to the point of kindergarten before people are realizing, or kindergarten aged before people are realizing that they're nonverbal. And a lot of the times the things that are cited is that she's very content and she's very quiet and she keeps to herself. So I know we've already gotten a few people that have hopped on and asked, like, why is it all women on your podcast? Well, it's not going to be. We're going to have plenty of guests that are men. And a lot of the studies and the people that I will be citing, also men that do great research on women. However,
we're just all women because this came out of a group text.
This came out of a group text. And yes, and we all each have had very, very different journeys in our diagnoses. So today we have an order that we're going to deliver those in. Shay was one of the lucky ones. I got her diagnoses pretty early. So we're going to start there with Miss Shay. Give us your journey, what that was like for you.
Yeah. So I'm a twin. I have a fraternal twin sister who is your typical, well, she's not even that typical. She's extraordinary in my eyes, but she's very logical and very well thought out. And, you know, for example, when our dad would give us $1 when we were a kid to go into the gas station and get a candy bar, I was like at the register half eaten while she would be like thinking about, you know. So anyway, so I had this naturally built in comparison, this neurotypical comparison my whole life. And thank God, shout out to my mom who is a therapist, and she was a social worker and always in the realm of psychology. When I was 7 years old, she was like, there's something else. She was like, you're not stupid. There's something else going on. So we're just going to go get it checked out. And so the process for that, I remember I sat across the desk from this white-haired, bushy, white eyebrowed man. I don't remember his name, Dr. Johns, actually. And he had me circle yes or no on, do you do this? Do you do this? Do you feel this? And I remember flipping, I'd be like, another page. And I was like so annoyed, like, because I had fucking ADHD and I didn't want to sit there, you know? So anyway, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I started out with Strattera, but it was a pill that had powder in it. And I was only supposed to take a half a day. So I had to have my big brother before school, he would peel it apart and dump half of it in water and then seal it back up, and I'd have to drink it. And I still sometimes think about the taste and how horrible that was. But back then as a kid, I was like, I'm different than everyone else. I just want to be like the other girls. Like, I just want to be normal. And I hated it so much. I hated it. And then, you know, in middle school, my medication transitioned into Concerta, and then in high school, it was Adderall. Well, then my ADHD started to be something cool because people wanted my Adderall. And so it was the first time in my life where I was like, okay, like this is like cool or whatever, which is so stupid. But anyway, you know, and that went into college or whatever. But my dad has ADHD, but he's never studied it. My mom wasn't diagnosed until she was 63. And so she didn't know anything about it. So I was just kind of left there to figure it out by myself. And I didn't take the time to do that until my mid-20s. It was always like, hey, you're different. Take this pill and go to school and try not to bother people.
Yeah.
So, you know, and then I took it upon myself when I was probably like 23. I was like, all right, if it's me and you together forever, we got to start working together here because I don't like you and you don't work well with me, you know? And so I studied and studied and studied and read books, and I learned, and I talked to my friends about it. And I was like, what is it like to date me? What is it like to be friends with me? Asking my teachers, what is it like to teach me? And then I started figuring out all the amazing parts of it. And now I am so grateful to have ADHD. I'm so grateful to know myself. It pushed me to learn who the heck I am. But I am so, so grateful that my mom was like, hey, let's go get this checked out. Because I mean, at the very least, I was medicated, which helped me a lot. So
shout out to your mom for being like, it's not you. You're not stupid. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just different.
Yeah.
I want to touch on one other thing too. It is a neurodivergent phenomenon that we all talk about our brains like it's a separate entity from us. She's a bitch. I'm just saying. But it is an interesting, neurotypical people do not talk about their brains as a separate entity.
Wow.
Something to be
wow. Yeah. And I just did that like very naturally. I've thought about wow.
I'll have conversations.
Yeah, Shay, you talk to your brain like you're like the stepdad and the mom died, and now you're left with this toddler kid. It's like, all right, kids, just me and you.
Yeah,
I mean,
my whole life I have felt like two people, always. And it's when I have conversations, I'm talking to other Shay, and I have a full dialogue with myself all the time.
Well, and they say like the devil and the angel, but like your brain versus like reality or whatever you want to say, like you're talking about, but like that is the strangest phenomenon to me that people don't have, because I will legitimately, like they say, like even in they're having one conversation, they're having one conversation outside, but like that's so normal. Like you literally have to have the self-talk has to be good, because you can self-talk yourself down really quickly too.
Self-talk. Like me and my many selves.
I know, right? How many?
Which personality will I be today?
Let's talk about your OCD one, Morgan. What was your diagnosis journey like?
Oh gosh, so I wouldn't say. I think when I was younger, I used to just think that my parents were strict, and that me and my brother had strict parents. But I noticed it with me and my brother down to like, we would always get really frustrated if like our socks weren't right in the shoe. Like basically like me and my brother combined, like we're 10 and a half, 11 months apart. So we're very close in age, not quite twins, but I guess Irish twins. And, but he would get really frustrated, and then I would see him get frustrated about his sock, and I'm like, well, I'm also annoyed about that, but I'm not like quite like as angry. It's not gonna like make me as angry as how he was. So we both had these tendencies, but like even my parents, like the way my dad cleans up a mess, like it's a whole thing. Like first you clean the mess, then you clean it with a cleaning solution, and then you're doing a third clean. So it's just like, I used to think it was just my family, but I think all of us have. My dad's diagnosed now, but I was diagnosed in college as OCD, ADD, right? Not so much ADHD, but I just assumed everyone had. The way they were prescribing Adderall and Xanax was like, everyone, if you go in and tell them these symptoms, like you're for sure gonna like get diagnosed with it and like get the prescription. So it definitely was more of like, oh, this works for me, or oh, this calms me down. But it wasn't until years and years later in therapy and self-discovery and honestly entrepreneurship where I really learned about myself, because in corporate America, you suppress everything because you would literally get fired.
Yeah.
But I was able to really like be more creative and like use what was considered, like we talked about in the first episode, like I was really able to use my weaknesses as strengths. And so like all the OCD things that were annoying became good for me because of like being organized in my work and all these things. So yeah, I mean, I just think that there's so many good things that you can play on though with it. Like I'm thankful, like Shay, you're saying I'm thankful for these things that I have, these little quirks, because I'm like, how do people live any other way, really?
So I actually I have two things on that. So you said not really ADHD. So just an FYI to the listeners, and I do have a site for this. It's the same book. I'm like obsessed with this book. The Year I Met My Brain. It ADD is no longer a term. It's all ADHD. It's all the same thing. So it's just ADHD.
Which I don't even think ADHD, Brittany, well, you're my age too, so that's probably, but I don't remember ever hearing about
Me either.
ADHD.
And I was going to talk about that next as well, because now there's 3 different types of ADD. You have your inattentive, you have your hyperactive, impulsive, and then you have combined. So they've just put it in all into one umbrella, which actually is a good segue for my journey if you want me to
go ahead. I completely forgot what I was going to say. So
jump in if you remember. But yeah, my journey is a little bit different. I grew up first generation Russian Jew from immigrant parents from the Soviet Union. My grandmother actually was a forensic psychiatrist and a practicing clinical psychiatrist for all of my life. And so she, God bless her as well, she always saw me as like this perfect, smart, amazing, like she, according to my grandmother, I'm like a writer, a model, a poet, an actress, like, you know what I mean? And she's also my bestest friend. So, but my point being that my family and our culture was not really conducive to like mental health issues. Like you're either like a criminal crazy person or you're normal. Like there's not this whole spectrum of neurodivergence. This is not something that I grew up with. So I always just grew up feeling like I was wrong. Everything about me was wrong. I was wrong because I was a tomboy and I wasn't a super girly girl, and my social interactions were awkward, and I just wasn't comfortable in my body. I just remember like most of my journey is just a journey of discomfort, like just being uncomfortable in my skin, uncomfortable in my brain, and not like having any support because I was just like the troublemaker, or I would get like FYI notes in my assignment notebook that my parents had to initial or sign, be like, oh, FYI, your child was a disturbance in class, your child has a smart mouth, or like parent teacher conferences, and it's like, she's so smart, but
she has leadership skills.
Well, it's like, she's so smart, like, but she just won't like behave, she won't fall in line, and I was always in trouble with like all the kids who consequently were like the young boys in my class who were already diagnosed, and at in 3rd grade or whatever, we're already on like Ritalin, and I was like in the same group of troublemakers with them, but no, but it was just like, oh, she just like wants attention. And that's one of the differences I think as well between male and female diagnoses and the age gap, is because when women act out, when girls act out, it's, oh, she's doing it for attention, and she, you know what I mean? So anyways, fast forward, the first time that I ever had treatment, and I was in therapy for like depression and things like that. I mean, it was rough at home. I was really rough on myself. I went through a lot with like bullying. I was like 220 pounds when I was like 15, 16 years old. So, and now knowing that also did a lot of damage to my gut, which consequently did a lot of damage to my mental health. Everything is all tied together, and I'm healing now, but I didn't get any sort of like support or treatment or diagnosis until I was also diagnosed with ADD. And this was like around like junior, senior year of high school. I don't think I was in college yet, because I remember already being on Adderall in college, and I had Adderall prescription and then a Xanax prescription. So it was like, oh, well, you have anxiety, so that's what the Xanax is for, because you can't sleep. And then here's the Adderall, so you can like shut up, sit down, and focus, which thank God, because I would have never graduated college without it.
Yeah.
And I definitely would not have graduated cum laude. Look, I'll tell you that right now.
You're
So
like,
it
this
was
works.
yeah. So it was Adderall, and then I switched to Vyvanse. And then after college, I was like, oh, I don't have any more tests. I don't really have any more like stuff that I have to sit down, read, focus on, remember. So I just stopped taking my meds, stopped getting treatment. And it wasn't until recently, maybe the past year or so, that I was like, I need to revisit this journey, and I need to revisit support. And so one thing that I really want to touch up quickly is, and then I'll wrap up, is the difficulty in getting properly diagnosed, especially as an adult, especially as a female, and the importance of self-advocacy, especially if you are an adult neurodivergent individual and you know yourself. It doesn't matter who the professional is that you're talking to, that person does not know you the way that you know yourself. So I had an appointment. It was the first time that I had a consultation with a psychiatrist. I was like, I filled out all the paperwork, which, you know, was like 15 pages of history that brought up a bunch of stuff that is like, you know, part of the background, but not the main issue. And when I met with this woman, she basically ignored everything that I had told her about my difficulty with executive dysfunction, the fact that I feel overwhelmed by the amount of tasks that I have now as a business owner, you know, and everything, all the plates that I'm spinning. And I told her very explicitly that I am seeking support immediately so that I can manage what I have, but also in that questionnaire, I also wrote down like all the supplements that I'm taking, which are geared towards like cognitive support, gut health, immunity, like all very structured. My workout routine, my diet, you know, the things I stay away from. So clearly I had already had a comprehensive holistic approach to my own self-treatment. And she basically told me that she believes that based on the questionnaire, depression and anxiety are the underlying issues that I actually have. And she recommended an SSRI.
Which
I
is
told her, thank you very much. As a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which I think is very, well,
It's an
I've had,
antidepressant.
it's an antidepressant. I've already had experience on multiple antidepressants when I was a teenager. They are horrifying experiences. It drove me to self-harm. It wasn't my issue. And I just felt like she didn't listen to me at all. And I was like, I told you exactly what my issue is. I'm an incredibly self-aware, professional adult woman. I need you to work with me on the things I told you I need help with, not sit there and trying to tell me, you know, something else. So, anyway, it is difficult, but just keep advocating for yourself, and you know yourself better than someone else. Do not let authority try and talk you into something you know genuinely is not right for you. So I'm still on my journey, but
So I'm gonna give you guys what just the baseline of what the average person's experience is for American health insurance system to get properly diagnosed. Are you ready? This is what the average woman in 2024 is reporting as their experience. You see your general practitioner. They have to write a referral for whoever's in your network. That referral has to get approved. You go see that person. That person is going to do a generalized assessment where they are not going to look for neurodivergent anything until they have weeded out the antidepressant and anxiety ridden neurotypical people that are our environment because of the world that we're living in right now. So they're going to attempt to prescribe you an SSRI or an SNRI or any of that realm of thing. They're then going to ask that you try that for at least the 6 to 8 weeks that it takes for those drugs to be effective. And then they'll look at reducing or changing the drug until they find one that works, not until they look at other options for what could be happening with you. And so that's going to bring me into, and then, so generally speaking, it takes 7 appointments to get to the point where you're actually taking the correct assessment for your neurodivergent issue. 7 appointments in today's medical association. Like, are you kidding me?
So I'm not going to say any names, but my best friend has ADHD and she really struggles without her medication. And in order to get it, she is having to go through all of these extreme measures to get her medication. And if you know anything about ADHD, we get very overwhelmed and then we just fucking quit. We just quit. So she's gone 2 years without being medicated because she's like, it's too hard. I'm overwhelmed and I just can't do it. So the fact that they're putting people through 7 in all these trials of things that aren't working and they're putting band-aids on things, it's so sad.
So to share my story on that, I have for years, since the moment that I was out of my mother's household and could actually go and get myself medical help. So about 19 years old, I started getting misdiagnosed and prescribed. I didn't get diagnosed with autism until summer of last year. And so I'm going to do a little show and tell right now, just to give everybody an idea of what this grasp is. And if you know me, you know I advocate medically. But when you don't know what you don't know, you'll try anything. Because I went through years of what was depression and anxiety. If you ask a generalized psychiatrist, turns out that was just extreme overstimulation and burnout. And that's it. So here's what I'm going to tell you. I've got and before I show you the stack of these, this was prescribed. All of these that I'm about to show you were prescribed to me in the year prior to my diagnosis, 1 year. So most of these I was taking at the same time. So I've got an SNRI, 2 different SSRIs. I've got Xanax. I've got Klonopin. I've got Tramadol. I've got a nerve relaxant and an antipsychotic. This is 1 year in the American Medical
I wish we could
Association.
do a show of hands for our audience for who was actually prescribed almost that exact same stack.
Well, and if
Please,
I would,
no, tap in the comments, please do.
Yeah.
it's crazy too, because if you're not like you're saying, advocating for yourself, like I was prescribed SSRIs multiple times. I just never took them.
And do you know what it
Like
does?
literally
to
just
mess with
wouldn't
the-
take them.
Do you know what it actually does to our psyches when somebody's neurodivergent and you mess with their serotonin or dopamine levels? It creates long-term inconsistencies that we cannot recover from at the same rate of a neurotypical person who produces their chemicals the way that they're supposed to. So here's the most shocking part about all of that. I am on 0 medications now and have never been this happy or healthy or balanced. And anybody that knows me can tell you that, because my self-harm started when I was 14 and did not end until I was 19 and went and started getting help. So there is and I'm going to say this for anybody out there that's currently struggling. It is not you. It's not the medications you're on. You are probably not properly diagnosed. Whew, sorry, I was a little emotional, but that is the reality of it, is that I never needed any of that. If I would have learned what overstimulation is, how to manage and ride my energy levels, like all of us, autistic, ADHD, or otherwise, we all have to do this, right? If I would have known that years ago, I think about now, like there's almost a core of rage. What I could have done with my life over the last 20 years, because I was 39 when I got diagnosed, 20 years of struggle.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that this becomes a place of social testing and social proofing, and that we can help everybody out there navigate these things, because it's not getting easier.
Yeah,
It's
the
really not getting
more
easier.
easy to access.
Yes. Yeah.
The overstimulation in general, like being cognizant, and I will never put down anybody for whatever medication they take, but quite frankly, like I'm just aware of my tendencies now to where I can suppress not needing Adderall or Xanax. But I was a very, avid taker of both, like Adderall during the day, Xanax at night. And really the only thing that got me to a point where I could be self-aware enough to like know what my tendencies were like getting out of my current environment. Like once I moved from Kansas to Las Vegas and was alone and was like, okay, I'm by myself, I'm working remotely. Like, what do I need to do to get my job done? Like, am I a failure because I'm not starting at 8 a.m. every day, but I'm really productive at night? So what's wrong with that? As long as I'm getting the work done, but being in an environment that's conducive, and I know we talked about this, but support systems that are conducive, partners that are conducive to being like in our flow.
Yeah.
And not having to
getting
depend
over
on
the
medication
stigma
to succumb to the 9 to 5. I mean, your Adderall is perfect for a 9 to 5. because you
Yeah.
got to lock in for those hours.
Yeah.
And
But-
again, that's also ADHD to autism.
Mhm.
You know, it's a whole different how we manage our energy rooms. But that actually brings us to a conclusion for this week's show and tell. I cried, didn't mean to. For all of you out there that if this is your first episode, you haven't like fully checked out our YouTube channel yet, we're gonna log off of this and then we're gonna log into our Yappy Hour where we are going to just unmask and fully process whatever conversation evolves from this episode. So we appreciate all of you. We know this was a long episode. Thank you for hanging in there with us. Like, share, comment, please share us. The more people that get eyes on these episodes, the more people we have the potential of helping out there. So we really appreciate everything that you do. And please share your experiences in the comments below because it helps guide us in where we go next. So
And I have two quick notes. One, all of us welcome you in our DMs appropriately, please.
Oh, yeah.
But if you have any questions, if you want to dive a little bit deeper, if you want to seek some kind of advice or support, we are not doctors. We are not mental health professionals. We're just women who are not going to gatekeep. And so we're all open. We're happy to help. The other thing is that we are constantly working to improve our audio, our visual. This really began as the four of us yapping and wanting to provide support to other like-minded and, you know, similar individuals. But thank you guys for your current support, and we will continue upgrading the visual audio experience for all you guys. So love to hear your feedback. Keep it coming.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all.
Go Birds.